All right. Welcome back to X Squared Radio. Let's keep going. The thing that is so exciting about Earth is that as the energy of humans, the consciousness of humans, conducts this symbiotic relationship, we think everything is bad because if you turn on the news and you let the propaganda stream at you, you have no choice. You have no choice but to think that. You can go around that, though. You can use pre-recorded material, or you can listen to the Truth Frequency Radio Network. We're on almost 24 hours a day, 37 hosts, number one internet network out there. And this is the number one program on Sunday nights, X Squared Radio. And you can walk away from that. But here's what's happening. 2 years after steady rains, followed by warm temperatures, caused seeds dormant for decades under the desert floor to burst open and produce a spectacular display dubbed the Super Bloom. Another winter soaking this year is expected to create possibly an even better show by Mother Nature this spring. So get ready for a population explosion for bees and hummingbirds and butterflies. Having 2 super blooms in 2 years is amazingly rare. In California, super blooms happen about once every 10 years in a given area, and they have been occurring less frequently in the drought. But the drought is over. And in spite of the darkness and hatred being pumped at us from the globalist propagandists, the year of light, as I declared it in December of 2018, 2019 is the year of light, and it is accelerating. We're cranking it up. We're winning. No matter how the press tries to tell you that our president is being defeated and America will soon fall to the socialists in Washington, don't you believe it. We are the love energy saving this world. The 2017 Super Bloom was the best seen in the Anza Borrego Desert State Park in 20 years, and it drew mass crowds to Borrego Springs, a town of 3,500 that abuts the park. Here are some of the comments. There's just an abundance in where it's blooming, and it's coming in waves, said Betsy Knack, executive director of the Anza Borrego Desert Natural History Association, which tracks these blooms. Retired couples and college students traipsed into the fields trying to capture the natural wonder in photos. But you know, the eye cannot behold the beauty of creation. No camera can truly capture the caressing breeze painting the land with life and creation. Stephen Rodding drove out from Carlsbad, north of San Diego, to take pictures with his girlfriend after a friend told him it was better than the one in 2017. It's unreal, Rodding said. It's just like they said. It's so beautiful. The setting sun lit up the yellow flowers that contrasted sharply against the brown and copper mountains in the background. There are tapestries of hot pink bigelow's monkey flower, purple sand verbena, delicate white and yellow evening primrose, and of course, the desert lilies, which bloomed extremely early, opening up in December, signaling a super bloom was coming. Bright orange poppies are also blanketing the sides of Southern California highways. Every single person who comes to the greatest color show in the world is humbled and brought to a profound state of calm and peace. This is planet Earth. This is the synergy between humans and the planet. The earth is bathing all life with its beauty and power. Be still and know that you are one with Source. So far, 6 times the amount of rain has fallen in the Anza Borrego Desert this winter weather season compared to last year. If the caterpillars and the freezing temperatures stay away, the already gorgeous wave of wildflowers should intensify and light up other areas well into spring. The state park, with 640,000 acres, that's about 1,000 square miles, by the way, is California's largest, with hundreds of species of plants, including blazing stars and the tall, spiny osatillo, which are covered in buds that will open to flame orange red flowers. A research associate recently hiked up to the top of Coyote Mountain and shot a picture of the purple fields 3,000 feet below. It was spectacular. Don't you believe that Earth is dying? It's not. It's alive. And if you want to read a great book series about it, read the Birth Trilogy, A True Story of Earth. You can get it. You can see the images flashing right there on YouTube on the side. You can see the book covers right there. The Birth Trilogy. You can get them at Amazon. Very easy to do. If you buy the paperback or the Kindle or the Nook version, I will give you the audio version for free. So if you're not a good reader, don't worry about it. I read it for you. Before we bring Suzanne on, we'll bring her on in about half an hour, maybe a little less than that. And then we're going to bring on Julian Forrest. Now, Julian Forrest is a neoclassical guitarist. I don't think you really know what that is because it isn't a sound. It's an experience, okay? And the reason I'm bringing him on is because he is going to be one of the very fine entertainers at the Beyond the Matrix Unity event in Sedona, Arizona on the 19th and 20th of this month. You still have time. There's still room for you if you want to go. If you don't want to go, but you still want to see everything, you can get it by going to the website, xsquaredradio.com, clicking on the events tab on the left-hand side and registering. And guess what? You can watch the whole 2-day event for $77 right in the comfort of your own home. Easy enough to do. So I call this segment the attempted theft of America. Okay, you've heard about this piece of legislation in the news. You've heard one side, you've heard the other. Maybe you haven't heard both. I don't know. But now you're going to get the truth. The Democrat-controlled House Thursday of this week attempted to usurp the Constitution by facilitating massive voter fraud on a scale never, ever even thought about in this country. It only had a 239 to 193 vote, so it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. But you have to remember, okay, the globalist syndicate never gives up. War only ends when the enemy surrenders, and they're never going to surrender. Does it mean the war is going to go on forever? No, it doesn't, because there's such a thing called victory. Fake stream news propagandists were in full form on all fronts, disguising H.R. 1 as the For the People Act. Nothing could be further from the truth. If signed by the president, the bill would expand early voting, enact massive and radical redistricting changes to allow Democrats to pool voters in hundreds of favoritized districts called gerrymandering. It would make Election Day a federal holiday. It would automatically register all foreign citizens inside the United States to vote. Yeah, it would. and that's a bad thing. It would force stricter disclosure laws for many political activities. One provision would force presidential candidates and vice presidential candidates to release their tax returns over the last 10 years. 10 years. Which Democrats have tried to force President Donald Trump to do since he was first decided to run for president. Why? Because he's a businessman and not a politician. No other reason. Oh, of course, no requirements would be imposed on Congress to do the same thing. It would make it virtually impossible for anyone to run for president that is not authorized and sanctioned by the fake stream news. The Democrat-passed bill faces stiff opposition from Senate Republicans. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said this week that it would not receive any floor time because, and I quote, I get to decide what we vote on. President Trump also threatened to veto the legislation in the event that it would pass through Congress's upper chamber. The Democrats know this very full and well, so they are just using this as a giant drum made of human skin to beat while they scream hate at the top of their lungs. But Congressman Mo Brooks from Alabama, a staunch House conservative, slammed the bill as a cynical Democrat move to dilute Americans' voting power with a flood of tens of millions of foreign citizens voting illegal in nearly every single state. We already see what happened in California, Minnesota, Michigan, and New York. Dozens of American elections were overturned as Ballots Are Us targeted the tally with fraudulent ballots. Well, Mr. Brooks said in a statement a couple of days ago, as a backdrop, let me emphasize that the long-term goal of socialist Democrats is to dilute and undermine the voting power of American citizens. How do we know that? By past socialist Democrat actions and conduct. For example, in many parts of America where socialist Democrats enjoy dominant political control, they have made it lawful for illegal aliens and lawful non-citizens to vote. Yes, Boston, okay, you want some proof? San Francisco, huh? How about Chicago? Over 120,000 foreign citizens registered to vote with just their driver's license. Recently, 449,000 plus people refused to show up for jury duty in California. You know why? Because they weren't citizens. They didn't speak enough English to be able to handle a courtroom setting. Yeah, and guess how you get called up for jury duty? Voter records. 449,000 plus foreign citizens registered to vote who couldn't serve jury duty because they weren't citizens. They're citizens of another country. All kinds of countries, by the way, not just Mexico, Bangladesh, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia. They're from all over. Over 90 countries of illegal aliens have been arrested in the last 30 days trying to cross into the United States illegally. H.R. 1 does its best to exploit and expand voter fraud loopholes that the Socialist Democrats slipped into the past federal legislation. That, for example, empowered as many as 95,000 non-citizens to register to vote and 58,000 non-citizens to actually vote, and that's just in Texas. Just in Texas. Representative Mark Walker, who's vice chairman of the House Republican Conference, also chastised the bill a couple days ago. He said White House Republicans remain committed to producing results. Our colleagues across the aisle seem only interested in retaining power and resisting productivity. In an attempt to legislate electoral advantages for their candidates, House Democrats are attempting to force North Carolina taxpayers to pay for campaign ads for California politicians. Instead of counting ballots from the Capitol, the new House majority would be counting the number of people who will be hurt by their policies that will cost $600,000 per household and make private health insurance illegal. So now you understand what's going on. The globalist syndicate, by the way, has identified its enemy. It has taken a while for this to actually come out, even though I describe it very well in my book, Charm of Favor, a true story of the rise of the Clinton crime syndicate. A middle class that outnumbers the combined poor and aristocracy is a relatively new phenomenon, dating back to around, the year 1900 or so. It's always been the enemy of the globalist syndicate. The rise of the middle class was one of the most significant and epochal developments in world history. The globalist propagandists worked tirelessly with all their power and wealth to either ignore it or treat it with disdain. Since the election of syndicate's latest Manchurian candidate, Barack Hussein Obama, in 2008, the destruction of the middle class is well underway, with unpredictable and uncontrollable consequences that promise to be just as epochal as its creation. Intellectual condescension toward the middle class is so common, it's cliché. What's rare are the attempts to go back in history and see things through the perspective of that despised group and its progenitors, the poor. That's what we do here at X Squared Radio. This is where the past meets the future. In the year 1800, virtually everyone was poor, living under conditions of deprivation and grinding poverty. It killed off 36% of the population. Even being wealthy was no picnic in 1800. Because the world was filled with the working poor. Current poverty line Americans live much better now, but the stress of a lifetime of failure with no respite is taking its toll. Life expectancy was an estimated 29 years in 1800. 29 years and you die. Just let that sink in just for a moment. Why? Farming. Farming, the occupation of almost everyone, was dangerous, and it was back-breaking labor from dawn to dusk. Most of those engaged eked out a tenuous subsistence. There was no electricity, there was no running water. It was primitive sanitation and healthcare, and none of the machinery, the gadgets and appliances we take for granted. Only a few wealthy poets who didn't have to wrest a living from nature waxed euphoric about its joys. And as the 19th century progressed, primitive factories, mostly in cities, began producing goods of much better quality, in more quantity and a lower cost than had been possible by artisans handcrafting their wares. No doubt, conditions in those early factories, they were abysmal. There were long hours, cheap pay, child labor, dangerous and filthy conditions, horrible accidents and injuries. We all know that. All that has been well chronicled and has been dramatized a million times, from Grapes of Wrath on and on and on, Cannery Row. But an important point gets overlooked by the propagandists who want you to blame capitalism for those conditions, bad as they were. The factories were a better option for those who worked in them than the farms from whence many of them came, or they would have stayed on the farm. Capitalism requires capital. It requires money. And early industrialization provided profits to capitalize more factories, further innovation, new inventions, new industries, and eventually the astonishing burst of dynamic energy that became the Industrial Revolution. Was it clean? No. We didn't know anything about it. They burned everything in sight. Each new generation of mines and factories and ships and trains and farms and other production became less labor intensive. It produced higher than average real wages, especially for the technology level jobs. It had lower percentages of child labor, and they were less dangerous. Every single day since then, those conditions and those earnings got better. They're pretty good today. You work in a factory today, you're going to make pretty good money. You're going to own a home. You're going to own a car. You're going to have health insurance. You're going to have a pension. You're going to have a 401k. The 19th century produced even more technological and scientific innovation than all the centuries before it combined, all of them. Societies didn't go from poor to rich overnight. Real world conditions, opportunity, income, wealth, health, all that stuff. Those who throw rocks at the Industrial Revolution, the period when America approached these laissez-faire capitalism, have to minimize or ignore one simple fact. And this is it. And it remains true today. Millions and millions and millions of people sold everything, including their own freedom, to brave the dangers of travel, the uncertainties of life in a new land, difficulties of learning a new language, the prejudice and the hostility they knew they would encounter, the daunting challenges of starting at the bottom and working your way up, and the absence of government giveaways and everything. They freely chose to immigrate to America. Sometimes the payoff was enormous. Andrew Carnegie really did get off the boat with 11 cents in his pocket. Cyrus McCormick, John D. Rockefeller, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, other success stories came from impoverished or modest backgrounds and worked their asses off. The self-made businessman became the American archetype, fueling countless aspirations. What aspirations? To join the middle class. The emergent middle class formed a cohesive force for political stability, and the immigrants passed their memories of what they had escaped to their children and grandchildren. They embraced the reality of the promise of America based on their own fruitful experiences. Stay in school, work hard. Very few people noticed the thunderhead on the horizon. It was meant to sneak into our lives like a cold winter breeze, slithering down every street and into every basement. That thunderhead was hate, directed not at America's flaws and its weaknesses, of which there are many, but at its virtues and its strengths. The globalist syndicate that had ruled the world for thousands of years in misery and mud, despair and hopelessness, labeled the American middle class as the enemy of the state. The sacrifice, hard work, thrift, and ingenuity that had lifted millions of people from poverty is every single minute of the day openly and publicly condemned as selfishness, blind ambition, and greed by politicians bought and paid for by the most evil men the world has ever known. The middle class is humiliated by the fake stream news as materialistic, anti-intellectual, and spiritually impoverished. The unprecedented wealth America is now producing is decried as wrong because it is unequally distributed. Forget about earning. It is the lure of public welfare that draws supporters for their plan of slavery and oppression. You can guess where this hostility for people actually rising up out of poverty by our own efforts came from. the desire for autonomy, for sovereignty, to be left alone, to be free, to make one's own decisions and live one's own life. They're the benchmarks of the well-adjusted society. But the globalist syndicate does not want a society where the rules are the same for everyone. The ruling elite of the syndicate demands their own special rules, while everyone else falls under their rule by law. There's no such thing as the rule of law for them. That the middle class is now fighting for its life reflects these two intellectual failures. We'll be right back at the top of the hour with more X Squared Radio. I'm Brooks Agnew. Don't go away.